Hey, Vikings fans! Something's been brewing lately, and you can just feel it, right? For weeks, it looked like the pick was basically locked in, no drama, no surprises. But now it feels like things are shifting behind the scenes, and suddenly there's real debate about what direction this team should go. And honestly, that's what makes this so exciting, because this next move could say a lot about what they really want to be this season. So if you want to stay up to date on everything happening with the Vikings, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Something shifted in the last 48 to 72 hours around the Minnesota Vikings draft strategy. And if you've been following the noise closely, you can feel it building toward a decision that could define not just this draft, but the identity of this team moving forward. Because for months, it felt automatic. Plug in the name, move on, next mock. The Vikings at pick 18 selecting Oregon safety. Dylan Thiemann became the industry default. Analysts repeated it, insiders echoed it, and fans started to accept it as inevitable. But now, that certainty is cracking, and what's replacing it is a real philosophical debate inside this organization. On one side, you have the defensive identity shaped by Brian Flores, a system that demands versatility, aggression, and instincts. A system where a player like Dylan Thiemann fits naturally. He's fast, 4.35 speed at the combine, he's experienced, and his production jumps off the page. 300 tackles, 8 interceptions, and a steady improvement in tackling efficiency every single year. His missed tackle rate dropping from over 13% down to 8.3% shows development, discipline, and coaching response. But here's where it gets interesting, because despite all of that, there are cracks in the evaluation. His hips aren't elite. He can get baited by double moves. He plays downhill with so much aggression that it sometimes takes him out of the play entirely. And NFL offenses noticed. Late in the season, they started setting him up. Short routes early, then attacking deep over the top. That's not just a flaw, that's a tendency. And tendencies get exposed fast at the next level. So now the question becomes, do the Vikings lean into that defensive strength, or do they pivot? Because entering the conversation, fast, is Kenyon Sadiq. And this is where things stop being predictable and start becoming dangerous for opposing defenses. Sadiq isn't just a tight end. He's a matchup problem waiting to happen. A 3-year starter with a skill set that allows him to line up inline, in the slot, or even motion outside. He's already being compared to Javon Holland stylistically in terms of versatility, but offensively, the ceiling comparison being thrown around is even more explosive, a modern version of Vernon Davis. And when you start projecting him into Kevin O'Connell's offense, things get really interesting. Because imagine this, you already have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison stretching the field. You still have TJ Hawkinson and Josh Oliver as a strong duo. Now you add Sadiq as a movable chess piece. You can live in 12 personnel. You can shift into 13. You can disguise formations pre-snap and force defenses to declare coverage mismatches instantly. Linebacker on Sadiq? That's a loss. Safety in the box? Now Jefferson gets single coverage. Try to adjust? The Vikings go tempo and exploit it. This isn't just about adding talent. This is about creating an unsolvable equation for defenses. And there's another layer to this that fans are starting to realize: roster flexibility. Because if Sadiq becomes that second elite pass-catching weapon, suddenly the organization has leverage. Paying top-tier money to multiple receivers becomes a question, not a necessity. It opens the door to long-term strategic decisions that go beyond just this season. Meanwhile, the draft board itself is quietly influencing this debate. Because while Thiemann might be the top safety in many mocks, this class has depth at the position. Players like A.J. Hall or Traden Stokes could be available at pick 49, offering strong value without forcing the Vikings to reach at 18. So now you're looking at a fork in the road. Do you take the safe projection and fill a defensive need with a player like Thiamin, even if 18 might be slightly rich? Or do you swing for offensive evolution with Sadiq and trust that you can still reinforce the secondary later? And make no mistake, this decision isn't happening in a vacuum. For the first time, this draft is being heavily influenced directly by Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores together. That dynamic alone adds unpredictability. Two different philosophies, two different visions, one shared decision. And if the recent momentum means anything, the Vikings might be leaning toward disruption rather than convention. So now I want to hear from you. If you're sitting in that draft room at pick 18, are you taking Dylan Thiamin to strengthen the defense, or are you betting on Kenyon Sadiq to transform this offense? Drop your take in the comments, because this decision is closer than it's been all off-season. And here's where things take another turn. Because just when it felt like the debate was settling into a two-player race between Dylan Thiamin and Kenyon Sadiq, a completely different name enters the conversation and quietly forces everyone to rethink what the Vikings might actually do at pick 18. We're talking about Peter Woods. Now, at first glance, this feels like a curveball. But when you start digging into it, you realize there's a real foundation behind the idea. Defensive line is still a need. Not a flashy one, not the one dominating headlines, but a real one inside the building. Woods is only 21 years old, and what stands out immediately is his versatility. He lined up everywhere on the defensive front last season. 3-tech, 5-tech, inside, outside. That kind of positional flexibility is exactly what a coordinator like Brian Flores values. Because in this system, it's not just about beating your man, it's about executing very specific assignments on every snap. And that's something fans need to understand. Flores doesn't run a system where defensive linemen just pin their ears back and chase the quarterback every play. It's controlled chaos. It's gap discipline. It's sacrificing individual stats to create opportunities for others. And that matters when evaluating whether a player like Woods is worth a premium pick. Because physically, the tools are there. Burst, quickness, the ability to shed blocks, and an incredibly clean discipline record, just one penalty, and that came on special teams. As a run defender, he's already reliable. He clogs lanes, reads blocks well, and holds his ground. But there's a reason why projecting him at pick 18 raises eyebrows. The production hasn't fully matched the potential. There were expectations that he could push into top 10 territory before this past season, but that leap didn't happen. He's still raw. He needs more pass rush moves, more consistency, more polish. And when you're picking in the top 20, those questions matter. So now, the Vikings are staring at three very different paths. You take Thiamin, you reinforce the secondary, plug a clear need, and continue building a defense that already looks like the strength of the team. You take Sadiq. You evolve the offense, create matchup nightmares, and give Kevin O'Connell a weapon that could completely reshape how this unit operates. Or you take Woods. You invest in the trenches, trust your coaching staff to develop him, and build a defensive front that could dominate physically for years. And what makes this even more fascinating is how the rest of the roster factors into it. Because quietly, one of the biggest strengths on this team right now might be the defensive interior, thanks in large part to the emergence of Jalen Redmond. He's been described as one of the most underrated players in the entire league, and opposing teams have taken notice. When they prepare for Minnesota, his name comes up just as much, if not more, than some of the bigger stars on that defense. So if you already have that anchor, do you really spend pick 18 adding to that group? Or do you maximize value elsewhere? That's where the draft strategy starts to open up. Because if the Vikings pass on safety at 18, there are still strong options later. If they pass on defensive line, they trust the rotation they already have. And if they take Sadiq, they unlock flexibility across multiple positions, including wide receiver contracts, personnel groupings, and long-term roster planning. And then comes what might be the most revealing part of all of this: the ideal scenario being discussed internally. A draft that starts with Kenyon Sadiq at 18 and then lands Traden Stokes at 49. Now that combination? That's where things start to feel like a home run. Stokes brings versatility to the secondary. He can play corner, he can play safety, and his ball skills are elite. His interception tape alone tells you everything you need to know about his instincts. Add in a 33 40-yard dash and a 38-inch vertical, and you're looking at a high-level athlete who can contribute immediately. Yes, there are concerns. He's coming off an ACL injury from 2024. He's older, with 6 years of college experience. He can play a bit high at times, which leads to missed tackles. But the upside, especially at pick 49, is undeniable. And if the Vikings walk away from the first 2 rounds with Sadiq and Stokes, everything opens up. Now you can attack day 3 with freedom. Running back, wide receiver depth, offensive line, maybe even your future center. All of it is on the table. The draft stops being about filling holes and starts being about building layers. And one more thing that can't be ignored: there's a growing belief that Minnesota is locked in on players coming out of Oregon. The reporting keeps pointing in that direction. Whether it's Thiamin, Sadiq, or another name entirely, there's a strong expectation that their first-round pick will come from that program. Unless the Vikings do what they've done before and throw a complete curveball. Because for the first time, this isn't just a front office-driven draft. This is a draft being shaped heavily by a head coach and a defensive coordinator working side by side. Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores bringing 2 perspectives into one decision. And that makes this entire situation unpredictable in the best way possible. So as we get closer to draft night, the question isn't just who the Vikings will take. It's what direction they believe gives them the best chance to win. Not just now, but for the next 5 years. Now, I want your final take. Are you building around offense with Sadiq, reinforcing the defense with Thiamin, or betting on upside with Woods? And if you had to pair that first pick with a second-round steal like Stokes, how would you build this class? Drop your thoughts. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in. Because this draft could change everything for Minnesota. Go Vikings!